Welcome to Tech Bites with Ash, where we discuss trends in digital technology that support true business outcomes. I'm Ashu Bhatia, a consultant, an author, and a practitioner of all practical insights for making informed decisions on your technology investments.
Well, hello there. Welcome back to my channel, Tech Bites with Ash. I really appreciate the feedback that I received from my last video that talked about cloud computing and the basics of building a program around it. Based on some of the suggestions that you guys gave, I wanted to take an opportunity today to present a brief case study based on my work with an insurance firm that was trying to take a few of those assets that were on-prem, storage, compute network, and take it towards the cloud with some hyperscalers in trying to build the right business capabilities that were important to them. I hope you find this session useful. So as you begin to look at cloud economics or building the case for cloud, my experience has been that it's always good to understand the industry, the value chain, which application pieces support the pieces of the value chain, as well as, of course, which infrastructure supports those applications, right? So if I look at this first piece of insurance, typical of an insurance company, whether it's, there's different kinds of insurance companies, whether it's property casualty, life, or health. Typically, if you look at the pieces of the way the value is built for the customers, you start with product development and actuarial, you do sales and marketing, you do underwriting for risks, you get the policy administration, and then you roll out the products. But then sometimes you definitely get claims, and then you have additional critical operations, things like mitigating risk, HR, compliance, etc. Right? The key to understand here is for those who are not initiated into insurance, actuarial builds a big function here in insurance because it deals with understanding how to calculate the premiums for the rates for each insurance product. You understand that, okay, even if you don't understand the nuances of how that's built, but do understand that that function is all about making sure that the premiums cover claims and expenses, that the company remains solvent, and there's, very strategic decisions based on some of that data that you capture, right? So at that level, if you understand what that is, going to the next piece is, like one of my, insurance CEOs once told me, no one wakes up in the morning and says, oh, you know what? I'm going to go out and buy insurance. It's not like a Nike Air Jordans or a Prada bag. It's a non-sexy product. It's something that people just have to. So the way that works is that you have a couple of touch points, right? You do a little bit of, research on how you can, get the product. Sometimes you're also trying to request a quote. You, of course, eventually do a purchase. And then you do customer handling, and then sometimes you do claims, right? So the key here is digital as well as physical branch, human touch is important. This was some research I found that I could share that a lot of people prefer some human touch for certain pieces of the journey, whereas others prefer digital. Of course, the demographics change, but the idea is this whole physical to digital world needs to be very seamless, hence called phygital, that you have a seamless switch between the two. The reason I say that in insurance is in customers and brokers are both very important, but these statistics were mind-boggling when I first saw them that typically customers think of insurance product as not differentiated. For example, if you go to company A, the same thing as company B, you just look at your premium, your copay, the tenure, and the cost of the policy, right? So nothing really differentiated in terms of the product. It's a piece of paper that you just buy. The second is a lot is dependent on the broker's recommendations if people are going through a broker. So brokers and agents play a very important role of cost and certain things in insurance in general. And then typically brokers will have a couple of products, so they're not as loyal, right? So all this blends into saying, how do you create value in an insurance company? Typically 5, dimensions: customer delight, how good you do underwriting and your risk aggregation, how are you good at selling, and then of course, how are you bundling the products? Are you able to bring some kind of innovation into your products itself, right? At the highest level, if you look at where the new companies are coming in, and InsurTech, as we know, is kind of getting in, they're using certain dimensions to create different business models. So the first one that you see, plug and play. I'm sure you've heard of examples like Lemonade, which is more like known for its APIs on the technology side, where you can integrate and kind of get the insurance product. or Trove, which does a lot on, on-demand insurance products for electronics and vehicles and things like that. Or you could become what you see as an advice-based insurance marketplace. I'm sure people have kind of heard of Select Code or Policy Genius in the Asian world, where you can easily compare products and recommendations, etc., and come up with what you need to buy. Another model that companies are exploring is Risk Broker, right? So you've heard of Aon, which does more data and risk aggregation so that they can broker those services and give you a nice recommendation of what to go for. So the idea is that depending on which dimensions and where you're playing in the value chain, you can come up with different models. It's important to know this because that all leads to this whole next piece of what I've been describing since day one. What is your customer experience going to be about? What is your employee experience? And then you kind of devise your initiatives and think of cloud accordingly. So at the insurance part, the key to understand is that your future state architecture typically will have what is called core platforms, which is more like how do you do rating, how do you do servicing, etc. All kind of typically done because it's been over ages on sometimes systems of record, as it's called, on mainframes and things like that. But then you have integration platforms to integrate other pieces and granular APIs to kind of interact with others. Then there's always data and analytics platforms to really understand where to make use of the data and information assets you have. And at the bottom, you see customer engagement, which, as I say, is more about how do you deal with customers or agents and provide a platform to really kind of work with them to kind of get things going. So from an insurance standpoint, there's certain things that you can take to the cloud. There are certain things that will be more expensive. You have to make that determination on the investments made. But typically the core functions like policy administration systems can be now done, but they're typically on build systems that are more legacy. Customer engagement models and systems are more relevant to cloud because you can have customer portals, people can file claims, they can kind of see where it is. You could have more like chatbots and virtual assistants where people are kind of really doing integration of CRM and understanding where things can be for you and how you can kind of interact with the systems. Also, as you gather more data, people are using a lot of telematics and IoT to use some of the data to come up with the rating, etc. So it's good to ground yourself in the basics of the industry that you're working with and then come up with a path to say, okay, if you have decided to do cloud, which pieces and why, right? So this slide typically is more grounding for me when I started as an example in a property and casualty insurance company. We started with the why, the what, and the how, understanding, building the business case, doing the application assessment, understanding the security requirements, going with the infrastructure that supports that application layer, and then eventually seeing how the operating model could be tweaked to make better service from IT to the business. In this example that I want to share with you quickly, we built, of course, a value case. We looked at all the key inputs like labor, how much the company was spending in IT in terms of full-time employees or contractors, understanding where the infrastructure, hardware, etc. was, also understanding where the software costs were. So what we did was we did an as-is run rate for labor, software, hardware. We started projecting if we went towards cloud, what would be the migration cost, what would be the one-time capital investment, to then categorize the savings in labor, software, hardware, and those kind of buckets, right? So the key was the output was more to say, are you able to really contain costs and do some reductions? Can you plan this investment to understand how the finance would work? And then eventually, what would the ROI be in a year, 2 years, or 3 years? So the way this works is, and this is more grounding, I will definitely have an episode on IT spend analysis, which is a lot of data that has to be put together. But typically to undertake these cloud projects, you define what is called addressable application spend. So all the IT budget that you have, there's certain things that will be always on infrastructure, on telecom and things like that. But you want to kind of see which pieces, if you're going to take to the cloud, have the potential for savings. And that's what comes up with what is called the addressable application spend. For example, if you're spending 20 million on IT and 10 million of your spend is on things like telecom or computer and non-addressable, that goes away. You take a look at the 10 million that is being done on applications, whether it's development, infrastructure, licenses. Out of the 10 million, let's say 3 million was on things that cannot be moved. They are completely legacy, things that are not suitable for cloud at all. So the 7 million becomes your addressable spend. And that's where you look for, opportunities to really kind of squeeze, your CapEx, end of life, etc., to kind of come up with more OpEx kind of format of those expenses. So in this chart that you see, what we did for this company was they had almost 400 applications, of which we felt only 150 were more addressable for the cloud. We categorized the spend on each one of them, as you see, on labor, licenses, facilities, network, compute, and storage to come up with what their total cost was to at least establish what we call a baseline, right? And then the cloud economics is typically a little more complex than anything else because there's a lot of pieces that come together, and we just categorize this as addressable spends, determination, which we just did. And then we said on the target state, what is it that we will be able to save, right? So you have what will be my future run rate be once I get to the cloud, which includes the run rate on cloud itself, the on-prem, which will still remain, and hence the difference between the two would be the savings. At the highest level, you build that and then start understanding what is it that you can do with this hypothetical cloud move. So on this slide, what I wanted to explain was in this example, we were able to at least show 18 to 20% year over year savings based on just different buckets that we were able to see. So you see labor, storage, compute, licenses have different savings for the company, but in all, we were able to at least kind of reduce the spend by almost 20%. And this was just the starting piece, right? We built that foundation. We changed the ways of working. It enabled the company to interact more on what their business strategy was in terms of data from outside. So basically setting up the foundation for innovation. And then the third stage would be accelerating all that and taking more benefits by participating and coming up with new products like microinsurance, etc. So the key that I wanted to explain here was that when we were working with the technology department, very quickly the business gets involved. And I would tell you that on this, for example, the compute details, yes, you are looking at, different data sources like CMDB or MAP, as well as, sometimes, because in this case, it was Microsoft Azure, you can do Azure Migrate, but a lot of that planning and reconciliation has to come with understanding different sources. A lot of people were asking us about where this data would come from and how would you really kind of do things in terms of locking yourself, let's say with Microsoft Azure, which is called Reserve Instance, and using hybrid use benefits to really build your business case. But what I was amazed was the second slide that I wanted to show in terms of details. We had the CFO come in and ask us, when we were looking at data storage and OS storage, there's different ways of pricing premium and standard storage, right? At the level of a finance head, he had the inkling and the knowledge to say, well, how much of that split is there? How much does it cost? Why would you have growth rates in each one of them so differently? Justify me and show me the data. So the point was that when you actually take cloud transformation programs, everyone is involved because after all, it's not only building the capabilities of the future, but also understanding the dollars and cents behind every piece of the IT spend that kind of goes into building these capabilities. So hopefully you enjoyed this and let me know your feedback. Well, as you saw, there's a lot of things that have to come together in terms of components for a very successful cloud transformation program. If I were to summarize this session, the three key takeaways from my end were that you have to understand your industry, you have to understand your company's positioning, you have to try to understand what business objectives are key from a value chain perspective that you start exploring which pieces can be on cloud or not. That is very important. The second piece is, as you build the business case, you have to be looking at your current needs and projecting and extrapolating a little bit into the future based on whatever information you have. Of course, there are ways to hedge your risks with one cloud or a couple of clouds, but you absolutely want to understand your growth as well as your current run rate to be able to do the right cloud economics. And thirdly, it's never to be done in one piece, right? There's a lot of components at the highest level, as we saw, things around your application assessment, things around your operating model, things around your security needs that all come together to really transpose itself to create a holistic program. Hope you found this session helpful. Please provide me any feedback, any kind of suggestions for future casts as well. Thank you so much.